Oh shit, everybody, wake up, what up, smoke a blunt. It's Degreeless this time. I'm your host, Shanghai Pete, high-tech, low-life, 21st century digital boy, the people's champion, and your good buddy in the mix. Well, Metroid Dread is out, and dare I say it, I think it might have been worth the wait. Shocking, I know. Let's get deep inside this motherfucker. You all know how it is these days. Gaming in general is just such unrepentant shit right now that more and more often you may catch yourself wondering, are games really that bad, or am I just jaded and impossible to please? But then, every once in a while, a game comes along that reminds you, no, it's not just you. Most games actually are shit, because this is what a good one looks like. Yes, good games do still exist. It's just that they, like movies and other bits of pop culture ephemera, are far more outnumbered by the tides of garbage now than they were before. Fortunately, I think Metroid Dread is one of the good ones. Picking up where Metroid 4, Metroid Fusion for the GBA left off, we see an X'd out Samus being sent to planet ZDR. What is it with the planet names? Like ZR388 or whatever? Why did they do this? Anyway, planet ZDR to investigate the disappearance of some robots named with the acronym EMMI or EMMI, who themselves were originally sent there to check up on reports of a surviving X-parasite from Metroid Fusion, or from the events of Metroid Fusion. Samus, being the only person known to have a resistance to the X-parasite, thanks to the events of Metroid Fusion, is ordered to head out there and see what's up. Not super crazy, but pretty much all you need for a Metroid game. So, first things first, before we go any farther, let's go through my biases because, well, it's me, so I have quite a few. I love Nintendo shit. I'm a Nintendo fan. Well, maybe I wouldn't go so far as to say I'm a Nintendo fanboy, because that implies an inability to be objective, and I don't think I'd go that far. But I do love Nintendo shit. I always have. I was a Nintendo kid when I was growing up. I had a Super Nintendo, not a Genesis. And Super Metroid is probably one of my favorite games of all time, if not in the top 5, definitely top 10. That all being said, to know where I'm coming from, it's also important to understand that even though I do love Metroid and games in the Metroidvania genre in general, that does not mean that I'm good at them. Far from it. If anything, I'm probably actively bad. Uptown Bobby, on the other hand, that motherfucker will spend entire weekend speedrunning Super Metroid just for the fuck of it. That ain't me. I'm fucking terrible at them. I love them, but I'm fucking terrible. To that point, using no facts or a walkthrough or anything, my final stats were about 16 hours clear time with 48% items. Now, if you're pretty good at these games, or if you use a walkthrough or something, obviously your time will likely be significantly shorter. But if you're average at these type of things and you don't look anything up and just kind of muddle through on your own at a chill pace, my guess is you'll probably come in somewhere between 8 and 10 hours, which is a fucking long time for a Metroid game. That's probably the first thing you should know about this jam. It's fucking huge. There are 9 total areas, 6 real areas, with the others being relatively minor, with like kind of smaller layouts. But those 6 are absolutely labyrinthine in the best possible Metroid tradition. You truly get lost down there in the depths of planet ZDR, and even though the map does a fantastic job, the sense of genuine exploration here is pervasive and expertly implemented. And it's not all brown underground rocks and shit either. The trailers gave it that impression, kind of. I don't know why they would do that, but thank God. This was something I was concerned about, but have no fear, the variety is here and it's in full force. Dread hits all the classic Metroid location vibes. You got burned out labs, abandoned caves, underground lakes, magma caverns, frozen wastes, and even lush green jungles. Now, if you remember, I jokingly mocked the graphics in a previous video, and for the most part, I still stand by that. It's not winning any awards here, and it's not exactly a towering achievement in graphical fidelity. It's on the Switch, you already knew that. But we're fair here, and while sure, it's not some boundary-shattering next-gen crisis type thing, it does look great for what it is and easily stands up next to other games of its type, so I don't see any issues here. I thought it looked great. While there's no fast travel, I don't know why some people seem to expect that. There are multiple teleporters scattered around that you can unlock, in addition to other elevators and trams between areas that you've come to expect. So, that being said, there are times when getting all the way across from one area to another can be extremely daunting. And this can be magnified by the fact that as you progress through the game, paths and doorways that you've opened previously tend to change and alter over time, making for occasionally frustrating moments where a path that maybe you'd scouted for use on the map to get to a different area all of a sudden halts in a dead end that wasn't there before. I would say overall this is a minor concern, but still something to look out for. Personally, I appreciated the effect that this had on the overall vibe. It made the world seem like truly large and more immersive. And honestly, like, if you're gonna have a big problem with backtracking, I'm not sure why you're playing a Metroid game in the first place. Probably not the best place for you. Next, let's talk a little bit about the gameplay. I'm not exaggerating when I say this might be the tightest controls I've ever experienced, especially in a 2D side-scroller like this. It's really incredible. If you've played Mercury Steam's 3DS version of Metroid 2, a lot of this will be kind of familiar to you. Melee counters, ledge grabs, easy wall jumping, etc. It all rules.
It all rules. All that shit rules.
Without spoiling anything, all the standard Metroid abilities and weaponry are here, plus a few surprises and new ideas. Adding anything to a genre formula that's as storied and revered as this one is no easy thing, but rest assured the additions here managed to channel the spirit of the franchise while simultaneously sort of nudging the envelope forward and expanding the boundaries of Metroidvania zeitgeist in a way that's as respectful as it is referential. That's a fine line to walk, and dare I say, I think they pull it off. Beyond that, there's not too much more to really say here. If you're watching this, I'll assume you have at least a passing interest in Metroidvania type games and thus don't really need me to go through the nuances and details of what is essentially a time-honored formula. Suffice it to say, what you're expecting is here, and it's fucking awesome. Now though, we come to what, if you lend any legitimacy to the mouth-breathing Access Media, is a divisive area of the game, the difficulty. Oh heavens. As I'm sure you've guessed by now, they're whinging little babies, and there's no problem with the difficulty at all. It's great. In fairness though, difficulty is often a hard thing to nail down as it tends to be largely subjective, but I'll do my best. Is this harder than Super Metroid? I'd say yes, actually, absolutely. Is it harder than probably all previous 2D Metroid games? Yeah, I think so. Is that a problem though? In my opinion, absolutely fucking not. It's fantastic. And I say that as someone who generally has little tolerance for super punishing difficulty. I like a challenge, but I don't like to be made miserable. But again, of course, that's largely subjective, so what might make me miserable, you might get off on. So I'll try to add a little bit more context. I generally cannot play Souls-like games because they tend to be an all-or-nothing type of skill cap. You throw yourself at a boss or an encounter over and over and over, and unless you beat it, you've essentially made no measurable progress. And because I'm mostly pretty bad at those games, that results in me spending sometimes days getting absolutely nowhere. Now, you might be different, but my tolerance for that is super low. That's gonna turn me off real quick. I need to see measurable progress as a reward for the time that I've spent mashing my face against an encounter. Even if it's slight, as long as it's progress and I can see it, I'll be motivated to keep trying. In my opinion, this is what Metroid Dread nails. Now, the boss fights, even the mini-boss fights, are all broken up into phases that slowly add on advanced mechanics as you progress through them and require you to master the previous phase before you can effectively move on. Now, sure, if you're really good at this type of game or get lucky, that's not always necessary, but in most cases, mastery of a previous boss phase is required because otherwise you won't have enough health remaining to see enough of the following phase needed in order to start learning it. This is fantastic balancing as it keeps you motivated through clear indication of what your mastery level of the encounter is, and many times kept me engaged where otherwise I probably would have just said fuck it and turned it off. I probably spent almost 4 hours on the final boss, learning and gradually adapting as my understanding and recognition of his patterns and their solutions increased. All that being said, however, again, huge caveat, difficulty is mostly subjective, and it still can really come down to personal taste. But if I can remain engaged and motivated, and I suck at these games, surely someone who plays games for a living should not have a problem here. In my mind, a generally sweet spot for difficulty is where just before an encounter has me about to throw the fucking controller in frustration, I beat it. A sincere challenge isn't strictly necessary for every genre, but in my opinion, it absolutely is for Metroid, and Dread nails it. There's no sense of victory in winning a battle that you can't possibly lose. There needs to be some struggle here in order for you to feel rewarded, something many so-called professional game reviewers would do well to keep in mind. Look what it did to my controller. That's fucking dope. Moving on, let's talk a bit about what actually has the potential to be divisive, the EMMI or EMMI robot sections. The zones where the robots kick it are clearly marked by special doors, and each contains a single blind robot that's immune to damage and hunts you by sound. You'll need to utilize a combination of careful timing, gameplay mechanics, as well as some of Samus's new suit abilities in order to sneak by him until you locate the mini-boss of each section. Now, once defeated, the mini-boss grants you use of a special weapon, which you then use to take out the robot and clear the zone. If you get caught before that, you get one shot, with your only chance of escape being an absurd, like QuickTime-esque event whose success window must be in the tens or hundreds of a second. Of all the times I died to those things, I might have nailed the timing like 5 times total, maybe out of hundreds. But again, I'm bad, so your mileage may vary. Either way, the panic mad dash that always ensues if you get caught as you frantically try to escape to the safety beyond the EMMI zone boundaries can be super fun. Now, once they spot you, their pursuit is relentless, and the margin for error while fleeing them exceedingly small. You'll find yourself screaming as you get slowed down to water section or fuck up trying to slide into a morph ball tunnel while that creepy fucking robot and the instant death it represents just keeps coming after you. It's awesome. Whether that sounds like fun or needless torment to you will largely be down to your personal preference. But regardless, you can see why that might be divisive, especially in a Metroid game. At best, these sections offer a fresh challenge and a fun shakeup of the standard Metroidvania institution, introducing brand new mechanics that require a rapid and drastic adjustment in strategy, even for veterans. At worst, though, they can be infuriating exercises in frustration that are capable of completely disrupting the game's rhythm, and depending on the player, could end up being a huge pain point in the overall experience. Personally, I thought they were fun, even though they frustrated the fuck out of me at times. The game makes merciful use of checkpoints in addition to the standard save rooms, and that helps make these areas easier to deal with, but either way, you should know it's highly likely that the amount of fun you have with Metroid Dread may hinge on how you feel about these robot zones. Don't listen to the Access Media, the difficulty is fine. It's these EMMI zones that are far more deserving of discussion and debate. The concept, though, stands comfortably on its own, fortunately, as a fully realized and seamlessly implemented mechanic. So, as jarring as a stealth section in the middle of a Metroid game may feel at first, like them or not, there's no question that they feel like they're supposed to be there. Overall, I think Dread is a brilliant addition to the Metroid franchise, and I had a fucking blast playing it. Challenging but not punishing, fresh but grounded, and innovative yet respectful. A good developer knows that an opportunity to work on a franchise as respected as Metroid is a fucking privilege first and foremost. The franchise and legacy has to come first and must always be prioritized over the agenda or ego of the people working on it. Motherfucker, Metroid is bigger than y'all, and if you're smart, you'll get the fuck out of its way. And fortunately for all of us, they did. This is a blueprint for how to successfully advance and update a revered and beloved game franchise and genre. You may disagree with some of the choices Mercury Steam made, and that's fine, I do in some respects, but it's clear throughout that all that came before was consistently treated with respect, and I fuck with that. With that in mind, you may be thinking I'm about to give this game a 10. I am not. In my view, a game that's a 10 is a game that is so perfect that I would change absolutely nothing about it. Secret of Mana for Super Nintendo is a 10. Chrono Trigger is a 10. Super Mario World is a 10. Quake is a 10. Doom Classic is a 10. I could go on, but you get the point. Metroid Dread is not a 10, simply because there are things that I would change. Not many, mind you, but possibly 2 main things and definitely at least 1. First is the music. This, again, is something that's largely subjective, but I found the music overall to be pretty unremarkable. It's almost entirely ambience and soft background textures. It's not bad by any means, and in certain aspects it's very successful and appropriate, especially as atmospheric backdrop, but it fails to rise to anything beyond just that, background. As someone who's been known to jam to OC remixes of the Brinstar theme from Super Metroid and still listens to tracks like Talon Overworld from Prime, dude, this was just really disappointing. Not a huge deal, admittedly, but enough of a bummer to prevent me from calling Dread perfect. Music has always played a crucial role in Metroid games, and sadly, I feel like it misses the mark here. The second thing is the EMMI robot sequences. Certainly innovation and progress require a developer to take risks, and these sections were certainly a risk. One that, in my personal opinion, were more successful than not. I think they pulled it off. However, I need to think beyond just my personal preferences, and overall I'm forced to conclude that as laudable as the attempt may have been, and as fantastic as its execution may have been, I think it's possible it was a bit too much a bit too soon. Especially considering how much of a central role these experiences take in the overall structure of the game. I was on the fence about how hard to knock the game for this at first, but once I realized I was hedging these sequences as a caveat almost every time I was asked about or recommended Dread to one of my friends, I was forced to admit they had a larger impact on it than I first thought. How well Mercury Steam executed on the idea has to be taken into account too, though, and for what it's worth, I think they did it about as well as it could have been done. And like I said before, the EMMI zones definitely feel like they're supposed to be there, so that's why I didn't dock the game more for it. They can be rough, sure, but at the same time, sack up, yo. Ultimately, regardless of whether I liked it, if an element of a game is central enough that a player's reaction to it could make or break the whole experience for them, I gotta at least call it out and mention it. That, plus the lack of any standout tracks, the music earned Metroid Dread a solid 9.5 and not a 10 from me. Okay, that's our show. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed or found this review helpful in some way. I had a ton of fun with Metroid Dread, and especially if you like Metroidvanias, I think that you will too. In the meantime, fear not, brothers. We love you today. We love you all the way. Tune in next week for more heretic burning and industry purging right here on Degreelessness.
Woke up, smoke up, blunt, then I pass out. Pass out. Woke up, what up, smoke up, blunt, then I pass out.